All right, so as we get into this week, just kind of a quick reminder of how this week is going to go. We are going to be reviewing genetics on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Your vocabulary quiz is on Thursday, and you will take a quiz on genetics on Friday. So we're going to take a very, very quick trip through Nearpod. I'll make sure to go back and add those codes for people that need those into Google Classroom in case somebody needs to go back through and get some notes out of here. But we're studying genetics, and genetics is the study of traits and how those are passed along and how we learn some things and how we acquire some things after we are already born. And inside of this, there are going to be some really good videos. You need to watch those again if you need to go back. Or you might need to go and look back at a slide or two just to give you some ideas on the genetics project that we're going to have this week. There are three things, and this slide in particular could be very important to you when you're working on your project this week. Inherited traits, acquired traits, and learned behaviors are all things. These three things should end up on your project when we work on those. We know that humans, other animals, and plants, we all get genes from our parents. We are the offspring, and our parents give us very specific things that tell us what our eye color is going to be like, our hair color, fur color, what our bone structure is going to be like, what our nose shape is going to be like, how tall or short we're going to be, and those types of things come from our parents. Skip through that one really quickly. Heredity is a word that might pop up every now and then. Obviously it'll be on your vocabulary quiz on Thursday, but it is the passing on of traits and physical features from a parent to their child or their offspring, which again right here, just a fancy word for their kids. Traits are those things that we've already talked about. Traits are the things like your eye color, skin color, hair color, ear shape, the flower color, how you fold your hands, whether you write with your left hand or your right hand, are all very important. Watch that again on your own. Genes are like the building blocks of a person. They carry the information that tells you what type of traits you will get from your parents. We've already gone over that. Not going to go over chromosomes too much. There were two types of genes that were very important to us, dominant genes and recessive genes. The dominant genes, we remember, overpowered everything else. If you have a dominant gene, it will express itself. It does not need to have two dominant genes. It is strong enough by itself to express itself. So like darker hair, dark eyes are dominant traits that you will show up if you have that gene present. Recessive genes are a little different. You might have a recessive gene and it's not going to show. You could be carrying a blue or a green-eyed recessive gene and not even know it until later on if you get married and your husband or wife has that same recessive gene and your child gets both of those. Because a recessive gene is not going to show up unless it has the exact same gene with it. And we saw that. We worked with those Punnett squares a little bit in class, and we saw that when we were doing that earlier last week. We watched this video. This is going to be another extremely important slide for you when you are working on your project. You're going to need to know what inherited traits are. And you're going to need to know that they come from your parents and or your grandparents in some instances. And some examples are listed here, probably all that you would need. You're welcome to look up other inherited traits if you need to. But I don't really think, Victoria, you're probably going to need to get into that because I think the list that's here pretty much covers everything that you might want to put on your project this week. I guess this could show up on your project, the attached versus detached earlobes. And when we were doing the bingo game last week, we realized it's really hard to describe that without saying it's when your earlobe is attached or not attached to the side of your face, right? I need you to know what that is, not because it's going to be some huge test question, but it could show up as part of a question or an answer. And if I don't do my job and teach that, and Tori's like, well, I don't have a clue what detached earlobes are, that's probably not the answer. That could be right, that could be wrong. but I do, now that we've heard about it, I think we all know what that is. Very similar with this widow's peak. It could be a test question. It could just be something embedded in a question where it's asking which of the following about this person in the description is an acquired trait. And if you don't know what a widow's peak is, you might get that question wrong because this is inherited. Learned behaviors. This is another thing, another slide that I think will be very important when you're working on your project this week, because you're going to have to tell me what type of learned behaviors the characters that you choose, and I'll go over the project in a few minutes, the characters you choose, what type of learned behaviors they might have. This is a great slide to pick that up on as I knock everything over. Another fantastic slide to refer back to, the one about acquired traits. As we're describing our characters, there might be some of these things or other acquired traits that you might know about or look up on the computer. And if you have those, then just make sure you put those in there accordingly. We're not going to watch this video again. You can watch those on your own. And that should take us almost here to the very end with instinct. You possibly could be using things about instinct in your project this week, depending on what characters from the books that we've read this year, which ones you choose. Right? Some of them have instincts. Actually, all of them have instincts, but some of them are a lot easier to write about their instincts than others, and we'll get into that here in just a few moments. So that's a very, very quick overview of all of the slides in Nearpod. Any questions before I move on? All right. So if you are in my Google Classroom under classwork where we put everything, and you're looking at 419 through 423, which is this week, and you pop it open, you're going to notice two things down here. The remote slides, which tells you what we're going to do every day, right? And then the Google Slides project, or the genetics project. Most of us in here, and probably some of the people at home, aren't really going to use these slides very much. You can, but I imagine most people are going to find it a lot easier to do this on paper. But I'm going to go over the genetics project really quickly. Might need to pause this. Yeah. So due to some things with Flash Player, obviously Flash doesn't work on computers anymore because they stopped supporting it, and some other factors that came into play, we're going to change up the way that we do our genetics project this year. In the past, we took a picture of ourselves and kind of pieced where we got all of our different traits from on that same slide using some apps that run with Flash, and then turned it into a project. That's not going to work this year for multiple reasons, so we're going to do a project like this. You're going to pick 5 characters from any of the books. It doesn't have to be the same book. It could be one character from every book you've read, and if you pick 5 from the same book, it really doesn't matter. And you can pick some of the ones that we've read in my homeroom. We'll get into that when the camera's off, but for the most part, just so it's fair to everybody else in the video, books that you've read with Miss Klein. And if I missed something, you can let me know now, and we can add it in. But you've read The Family Under the Bridge, correct? Okay, you read A Long Walk to Water. You read The One and Only Ivan. Love That Dog, and The Mixed Up Files, I think, is what you're currently in now. Have you finished that yet? You finished that? Have you started a new one? Starting a new one today? We can add that one in after today because this is Google. It'll save it. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to pick those 5 characters. You are going to draw what you think they look like in your head. Okay? You're going to tell me about inherited traits that they have, acquired traits that they have, and learned behaviors that they have. And I would imagine in most people's head right now, because when I write these kind of things, I try to put myself in your shoes. Somebody in here is probably saying, how am I supposed to know what kind of traits they had? The books didn't tell me that. Right, Carter? Books didn't tell me that. I have no idea what Seth looks like in Fablehaven because it doesn't describe him. The only thing it says is it's Kendra's little brother. All right. So Ruby was telling me in some books that you read, they did describe them a little bit, right? Now I know that I was thinking about like Harry Potter. she goes into such description about Harry Potter that I don't think anyone was shocked when they watched the movie. I don't think anybody said, well, that's not what I thought they looked like. They were like, no, that's exactly what I thought he looks like. And when you saw Ron, you're like, yep, that's Ron. I mean, it just is. Even Hermione in the first one, like the way her hair's like big and poofy and kind of messy is the way she was described in the books. Some of the books that we've read this year, they don't really go into like that in-depth of description. Some of them, like Ruby said, they do describe a little bit. But as we're reading, I guarantee you, each of you have like this picture in your head of what these characters look like. If we're talking Hidden Figures, you don't have to pretend. You can look them up online, right? And really understand what they look like. So each character is very unique. We're going to use that, use our imagination and our creativity and draw these pictures. So again, I'm using Fablehaven. I picture Seth probably different than some of you. I think he's like this short, redheaded kid with freckles. He's got straight hair that's never combed because it's messy, because he doesn't seem like the kind of kid that would take the time to comb his hair. I think he's left-handed. I don't know. It's just the way I think about it. I think he's got scars on his knees and his elbows from falling, from riding a bike, and from climbing a tree. Do they ever say that? No, but can you imagine Seth like scarring his knee in a tree, climbing trees? Yes, because that fits his character in the books. I think he got his hair color from his dad and his freckles and his left-handedness from his mom. Right? But if it's red hair, I know he also got one of those recessive genes from his dad too, right? Unless his mom had both little R's, but you get genes from both your parents. So the dad had to have that as well. Make sense? I don't think it's too hard. This is what you are not going to do. Claudia, brown hair from her mom, brown eyes from her dad, and here's my picture of Claudia. Exactly. What is that? Would be the question that I would ask you as well. This shows zero effort. You know how long it took me to do that? About 30 seconds. And that's only because I had to get my picture uploaded to this. Take your time. Be very descriptive. If you're going to say that your character has brown hair, do you know what you should probably do? Draw brown hair. If they're going to have freckles, you should probably give them freckles. If they have a scar, show it. If you're going to tell me they have detached earlobes, you might want to do like, you can like the little arrows pointing to their ear, and then like there's a picture beside that in a circle, like it's expanded. Draw that and show me attached or detached earlobes if you're going to do that. Again, it's reasonable to assume she has a scar from skinning her knee from hiding from a guard really quickly under a bed or something, isn't it? Can you imagine that happening in that book? Sure, I can imagine that happening as well. This is a chance for you to be extremely creative. In the past, this was a very rigid project. There really weren't any ways for you to be super creative. This one opens the entire universe of books that you've read this year and allows you to be extremely creative. Do not take 5 minutes to do this. Do not take 4 weeks to do this. Right? I'm looking at very specific people. You know who you are. Don't take forever. Don't turn it in on the first day, because if you turn it in today, I'm going to say there's no way that you finish that. As we're going through this, I guarantee you there's going to be questions. Am I doing this right? Do I have enough information? I'll be happy to answer those, whether it's in an email from somebody from home, a dojo from a parent, or a student in my class that walks up to me and wants me to look at something. But while we're working on these in class, I'm going to be pulling people to the back to continue to do our podcast series, because I've got to get that done. That's part of a major grade. Green Screen Podcast is a major grade. Some of you are probably looking at your stuff going, I don't have my grade yet, because you haven't done both things yet. Everyone is finished with green screen. Not many people have finished with podcasting. That takes a little while, a little bit more effort. All right, I'm going to pause this. If you have questions and you're at home, send me an email, a dojo, hit me up on Google Classroom, get in contact with me some way. Don't wait until Friday, because it'd be too late, right? Because I think we should be done by Friday. I think that's fair.